Welcome to NCERT Reading Class 7 History Chapter 6. Kindly go through all the pages of this chapter before you start reading. Devotional Paths to the Divine. You may have seen people perform rituals of worship or singing bhajans, kirtans or qawwalis or even repeating the name of God in silence and noticed that some of them are moved to tears. Such intense devotion or love of God is the legacy of various kinds of bhakti and Sufi movements that have evolved since the 8th century. The idea of a supreme God. Before large kingdoms emerged, different groups of people worshipped their own gods and goddesses. As people were brought together through the growth of towns, trade, and empires, new ideas began to develop. The idea that all living things pass through countless cycles of birth and rebirth, performing good deeds and bad, came to be widely accepted. Similarly, the idea that all human beings are not equal, even at birth, gained ground during this period. The belief that social privileges came from birth in a noble family or a high caste was the subject of many learned texts. Many people were uneasy with such ideas and turned to the teachings of Buddha or the Jainas, according to which it was possible to overcome social differences and break the cycle of rebirth through personal effort. Others felt attracted to the idea of a supreme God who could deliver humans from such bondage if approached with devotion or bhakti. This idea, advocated in the Bhagavad Gita, grew in popularity in the early centuries of the Common Era. The beginning of Bhakti. Worship of certain deities, which became a central feature of later Hinduism, gained in importance. These deities included Shiva, Vishnu, and goddesses such as Durga. These deities were worshipped through bhakti, an idea that became very popular at this time. Bhakti is generally understood as a person's devotion to his or her chosen deity. Anybody, whether rich or poor, belonging to the so called high or low caste, man or woman, could follow the path of bhakti. The idea of bhakti is present in the Bhagavad Gita, a sacred book of the Hindus. Shiva, Vishnu, and Durga as supreme deities came to be worshipped through elaborate rituals. At the same time, gods and goddesses worshipped in different areas came to be identified with Shiva, Vishnu, or Durga. In the process, local myths and legends became a part of the Puranic stories, and methods of worship recommended in the Puranas were introduced into the local cults. Eventually, the Puranas also laid down that it was possible for devotees to receive the grace of God regardless of their caste status. The idea of bhakti became so popular that even Buddhists and Jainas adopted these beliefs. Bhakti in South India. Nayanars and Alvas. The 7th to 9th centuries saw the emergence of new religious movements led by the Nayanars, saints devoted to Shiva, and Alvas, saints devoted to Vishnu, who came from all castes, including those considered untouchable like the Pulayar and the Panas. They were sharply critical of the Buddhists and Jainas and preached ardent love of Shiva or Vishnu as the path to salvation. They drew upon the ideals of love and heroism as found in the Sangam literature, the earliest example of Tamil literature composed during the early centuries of the Common Era, and blended them with the values of bhakti. The Nayanars and Alvas went from place to place, composing exquisite poems in praise of the deities enshrined in the villages they visited and set them to music. Between the 10th and 12th centuries, the Chola and Pandya kings built elaborate temples around many of the shrines visited by the saint poets, strengthening the links between the Bhakti tradition and temple worship. This was also the time when their poems were compiled. Besides hagiographies or religious biographies of the Alvas and Nayanas were also composed. Today, we use these texts as sources for writing histories of the Bhakti tradition. Nayanars and Alvas. There were 63 Nayanars who belonged to different social backgrounds such as potters, untouchable workers, peasants, hunters, soldiers, brahmanas, and chiefs. The best known among them were Appar, Sambandar, Sundarar, and Manikavasagar. There are two sets of compilations of their songs, Devaram and Tiruvasagam. There were 12 Alvas who came from equally divergent backgrounds, the best known being Periyalvar, his daughter Andal, Tondarai Pundi, Alvar, and Nammalvar. Their songs were compiled in the Divya Prabandham, The Devotee and the Lord. This is a composition of Manikavasagar. Into my vile body of flesh you came as though it were a temple of gold, and soothed me wholly and saved me. O Lord of grace, O gem most pure, sorrow and birth and death and illusion, you took from me and set me free. O bliss, O light, I have taken refuge in you, and never can I be parted from you. Philosophy and Bhakti. Shankara, one of the most influential philosophers of India, was born in Kerala in the 8th century. He was an advocate of Advaita, or the doctrine of the oneness of individual soul and the supreme God, which is the ultimate reality. He taught that Brahman, the only or ultimate reality, was formless and without any attributes. He considered the world around us to be an illusion or Maya and preached renunciation of the world and adoption of the path of knowledge to understand the true nature of Brahman and attain salvation. Ramanuja, born in Tamil Nadu in the 11th century, was deeply influenced by the Alvas. According to him, the best means of attaining salvation was through intense devotion to Vishnu. Vishnu, in his grace, helps the devotee to attain the bliss of union with him. He propounded the doctrine of Vishtadvaita, or qualified oneness, in that the soul, even when united with the Supreme God, remained distinct. Ramanuja's doctrine greatly inspired the new strand of bhakti which developed in North India subsequently. Basavana's Veerashaivism. We noted earlier the connection between the Tamil Bhakti movement and temple worship. This in turn led to a reaction that is best represented in the Veerashaiva movement initiated by Basavana and his companions like Allamma Prabhu and Akka Mahadevi. This movement began in Karnataka in the mid 12th century. The Veerashaivas argued strongly for the equality of all human beings and against Brahmanical ideas about caste and the treatment of women. They were also against all forms of ritual and idol worship. Veerashaiva Vachanas. These are vachanas or sayings attributed to Basavana. The rich will make temples for Shiva. What shall I, a poor man, do? My legs are pillars, the body the shrine, the head a cupola of gold. Listen, O Lord of the meeting rivers. Things standing shall fall, but the moving ever shall stay. Bhakti movement in the Deccan. From the 13th to the 17th centuries, Maharashtra saw a great number of saint poets whose songs in simple Marathi continue to inspire people. The most important among them were Dhyaneshwar, Gyaneshwar, Namdev, Eknath, and Tukaram, as well as women like Sukhbai and the family of Chokamela, who belonged to the untouchable Mahar caste. This regional tradition of bhakti focused on the Vitala, a form of Vishnu temple in Padarpur, as well as on the notion of a personal God residing in the hearts of all people. These saint poets rejected all forms of ritualism, outward display of pity, and social differences based on birth. In fact, they even rejected the idea of renunciation and preferred to live with their families, earning their livelihood like any other person, while humbly serving fellow human beings in need. A new humanist idea emerged as they insisted that bhakti lay in sharing others' pain. As the famous Gujarati saint Narsi Mehra said, they are Vaishnavas who understand the pain of others. The Vaishnava poet saints of Maharashtra, such as Jnaneshwar, Namadeva, Eknath, and Tukaram, were devotees of Lord Vithala. Devotion around Lord Vithala gave rise to the Varkasi sect, which lay emphasis on an annual pilgrimage to Pandharpur. The cult of Vithala emerged as a powerful mode of devotion and was very popular among the people. Questioning the social order. This is an Abhang, Marathi devotional hymn of Sant Tukaram. He who identifies with the battered and the beaten, mark him as a saint, for God is with him. He holds every forsaken man close to his heart. He treats a slave as his own son. Says Tuka, I won't be tired to repeat again. Such a man is God in person. Here is an abang composed by Chokamela's son. You made us low caste. Why don't you face that fact, great Lord? A whole life left over food to eat. You should be ashamed of this. You have eaten in our home. How can you deny it? Chukasan, Karmamela asks, why did you give me life? Nathpanthis, Siddhas, and Yogis. A number of religious groups that emerged during this period criticized the ritual and the other aspects of conventional religion and the social order using simple logical arguments. Among them were the Nathpanthis, Siddhacharas, and Yogis. They advocated renunciation of the world. To them, the path to salvation lay in meditation on the formless, ultimate reality and the realization of oneness with it. To achieve this, they advocated intense training of the mind and body through practices like yogasanas, breathing exercises, and meditation. These groups became particularly popular among low castes. Their criticism of conventional religion created the ground for devotional religion to become a popular force in northern India. Islam and Sufism. The Sants had much in common with the Sufis, so much so that it is believed that they adopted many ideas of each other. Sufis were Muslim mystics. They rejected outward religiosity and emphasized love and devotion to God and compassion towards all fellow human beings. Islam propagated strict monotheism or submission to one God. In the 8th and 9th centuries, religious scholars developed different aspects of the holy law, Shariat, and theology of Islam. While the religion of Islam gradually became more complex, Sufis provided it with an additional dimension that favored a more personal devotion to God. The Sufis often rejected the elaborate rituals and codes of behavior demanded by Muslim religious scholars. They sought union with God much as a lover seeks his beloved with a disregard for the world. Like the saint poets, the Sufis too composed poems expressing their feelings and a rich literature in prose, including anecdotes and fables developed around them. Among the great Sufis of Central Asia were Ghazali, Rumi, and Sadi. Like the Nathpanthis, Siddhas, and Yogis, the Sufis do believe that the heart can be trained to look at the world in a different way. They developed elaborate methods of training using zikr, chanting of a name or sacred formula, contemplation, sama, singing, raqs, dancing, discussion of parables, breath control, etc., under the guidance of master or pir. Thus emerged the silsilas, a spiritual genealogy of Sufi teachers, each following a slightly different method, tarika, or instruction and ritual practice. In Kashmir, the Rishi order of Sufism flourished in the 15th and 16th centuries. This order was established by Sheikh Nuruddin Wali, also known as Nund Rishi, and had a deep impact on the life of the people in Kashmir. A number of shrines dedicated to Rishi saints can be found in many parts of Kashmir. A large number of Sufis from Central Asia settled in Hindustan from the 11th century onwards. This process was strengthened with the establishment of Delhi Sultanate, where several major Sufi centers developed all over the subcontinent. The Chishti Silsila was among the most influential orders. It had a long line of teachers like Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti of Ajmer, Qutbuddin Bakhtiyar Khaki of Delhi, Baba Farid of Punjab, Khwaja Nizamuddin Aulia of Delhi, and Bandanawaz Jisudaraza of Gulbarga. The Sufi masters held their assemblies in their khanqahs or hospices. Devotees of all descriptions, including members of the royalty and nobility and ordinary people, flocked to these kankas. They discussed spiritual matters, sought the blessing of the saints in solving their worldly problems, or simply attend the music and dance sessions. Often people attributed Sufi masters with miraculous powers that could relieve others of their illness and troubles. The tomb of Dargah the tomb or dargah of a Sufi saint became a place of pilgrimage to which thousands of people of all faiths thronged. Hospice, house of rest for travelers, especially one kept by a religious order. Finding the Lord. Jalaluddin Rumi was a great 13th century Sufi poet from Iran who wrote in Persian. Here is an excerpt from his work. He was not on the cross of the Christians. I went to the Hindu temples. In none of them was there any sign. He was not on the heights or in the lowlands. I went to the Kaaba of Mecca. He was not there. I asked about him from Avicenna the philosopher. He was beyond the range of Avicenna. I looked into my heart. In that his place I saw him. He was in no other place. New religious developments in North India. The period after the 13th century saw a new wave of bhakti movement in North India. This was an age when Islam, Brahmanical Hinduism, Sufism, various strands of bhakti, and Nathpans, Siddhas, and yogis influenced one another. We saw that new kingdoms, chapter 2, 3, and 4, were emerging and people were taking up new professions and finding new roles for themselves. Such people, especially craftspersons, peasants, traders, and laborers, thronged to listen to these new saints and spread their ideas. Some of them, like Kabir and Baba Guru Nanak, rejected all orthodox religions. Others, like Tulsidas and Surdas, accepted existing beliefs and practices but wanted to make these accessible to all. Tulsidas conceived of God in the form of Rama. Tulsidas' composition, the Ramacharitmanas, written in Awadhi, a language used in eastern Uttar Pradesh, is important both as an expression of his devotion and as a literary work. Surdas was an ardent devotee of Krishna. His compositions, compiled in the Sursagara, Surasaravali, and Sahitya Lahari, express his devotion. Also contemporary was Shankaradeva of Assam, late 15th century, who emphasized devotion to Vishnu and composed poems and plays in Assamese. He began the practice of setting up namgars or houses of recitation and prayer, a practice that continues to date. This tradition also included saints like Daddu Dayal, Ravidas, and Mirabai. Mirabai was a Rajput princess married into the royal family of Mewar in the 16th century. Mirabai became a disciple of Ravidas, a saint from a caste considered untouchable. She was devoted to Krishna and composed innumerable bhajans expressing her intense devotion. Her songs also openly challenged the norms of the upper caste and became popular with the masses in Rajasthan and Gujarat. A unique feature of most of the saints is that their works were composed in regional languages and could be sung. They became immensely popular and were handed down orally from generation to generation. Usually, the poorest, more deprived communities and women transmitted these songs, often adding their own experiences. Thus, the songs as we have them today are as much as a creation of saints as a generation of people who sang them. They have become a part of a living popular culture. This is a song composed by Mirabai, Beyond the Rana's Palace. Ranaji, I have left your norms of shame and false decorum of the princely life. I have left your town, and yet, Rana, why have you kept up enmity against me? Rana, you gave me a cup of poison. I drank it laughing. Rana, I will not be destroyed by you. And yet, Rana, why have you kept up enmity against me? The essence of Shankaradeva's devotion came to be known as Eka Sarana Nama Dharma, supreme surrender to the One. The teachings of Shankaradeva were based on Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavata Purana. He also encouraged the establishment of satra or monasteries for transmission of knowledge. His major compositions include Kirtana Gosha. An important contribution of Bhakti saints was towards the development of music. Jayadeva of Bengal composed the Gita Govinda in Sanskrit, each song composed in a particular raga and tala. A significant impact that these saints had on music was the use of bhajan, kirtan, and abang. These songs, which emphasized on emotional experience, had a tremendous appeal to the common people. A closer look. Kabir. Kabir, who probably lived in the 15th 16th centuries, was one of the most influential saints. He was brought up in a family of Muslim julahas or weavers settled in or near the city of Benares, Varanasi. We have little reliable information about his life. We get to know of his ideas from a vast collection of verses called Sakis or Pads, said to have been composed by him and sung by wandering bhajan singers. Some of these were later collected and preserved in the Guru Granth Sahib, Panchwani, and Bijak. In Search of the True Lord. Here is a composition of Kabir. O Allah Ram, present in all living beings, have mercy on your servants, O Lord. Why bump your head on the ground? Why bathe your body in water? You kill and you call yourself humble, but your vices you conceal. 24 times the Brahmana keeps the Ekadasi fast, while the Kasi observes the Ramzan. Tell me, why does he set aside the 11 months to seek spiritual fruit in the 12th? Hari dwells in the east, they say, and Allah resides in the west. Search for him in the heart of your heart. There he dwells, Rahim Ram. Kabir's teachings were based on a complete, indeed vehement, rejection of the major religious traditions. His teachings openly ridiculed all forms of external worship of both Brahmanical Hinduism and Islam, the preeminence of the priestly classes, and the caste system. The language of his poetry was a form of spoken Hindi widely understood by ordinary people. He also sometimes used cryptic language which is difficult to follow. Kabir believed in a formless supreme God and preached that the only path to salvation was through bhakti or devotion. Kabir drew his followers from among both Hindus and Muslims. A closer look. Baba Guru Nanak. We know more about Baba Guru Nanak 1469 to 1539 than about Kabir. Born at Talwandi, Nankana Sahib in Pakistan, he travelled widely before establishing a centre at Kartarpur, Dera Baba Nanak on the river Ravi. A regular worship that consisted of the singing of his own hymns was established there for his followers. Irrespective of their former creed, caste, or gender, his followers ate together in the common kitchen langar. The secret space thus created by Baba Guru Nanak was known as Dharmsal. It is now known as Gurudwara. Before his death in 1539, Baba Guru Nanak appointed one of his followers as his successor. His name was Lena, but he came to be known as Guru Angad, signifying that he was a part of Baba Guru Nanak himself. Guru Angad compiled the compositions of Baba Guru Nanak, to which he added his own in a new script known as Gurmukhi. The three successors of Guru Angad also wrote under the name of Nanak and all of these compositions were compiled by Guru Arjan in 1604. To this compilation were added the writings of other figures like Shaikh Farid, Sant Kabir, Bhagat Namdev, and Guru Tej Bahadur. In 1706, this compilation was authenticated by Guru Tej Bahadur's son and successor, Guru Gobind Singh. It is now known as Guru Granth Sahib, the holy scripture of the Sikhs. The number of Baba Guru Nanak's followers increased through the 16th century under his successors. They belonged to a number of castes, but traders, agriculturists, artisans, and craftsmen predominated. This may have something to do with Baba Guru Nanak's insistence that his followers must be householders and should adopt productive and useful occupations. They were also expected to contribute to the general funds of the community of followers. By the beginning of the 17th century, the town of Ramdaspur, Amritsar, had developed around the central Gurudwara called Harmandir Sahib, Golden Temple. It was virtually self governing, and modern historians refer to the early 17th century Sikh community as a state within the state. The Mughal Emperor Jahangir looked upon them as a potential threat, and he ordered the execution of Guru Arjan in 1606. The Sikh movement began to get politicized in the 17th century, a development which culminated in the institution of Khalsa by Guru Gobind Singh in 1699. The community of the Sikhs, called the Khalsa Panth, became a political entity. The changing historical situation during the 16th and 17th centuries influenced the development of the Sikh movement. The ideas of Baba Guru Nanak had a huge impact on this development from the very beginning. He emphasized the importance of the worship of one God. He insisted that caste, creed, or gender was irrelevant for attaining liberation. His idea of liberation was not that of a state of inert bliss, but rather the pursuit of active life with a strong sense of social commitment. He himself used the terms Nam, Dhan, and Isnan for the essence of his teaching, which actually meant right worship, welfare of others, and purity of conduct. His teachings are now remembered as Nam Japna, Kirt Karna, and Vand Chakna, which also underline the importance of right belief and worship, honest living, and helping others. Thus, Baba Guru Nanak's idea of equality had social and political implications. This might partly explain the difference between the history of the followers of Baba Guru Nanak and the history of followers of the other religious figures of the medieval centuries like Kabir, Ravidas, and Daddu, whose ideas were very similar to those of Baba Guru Nanak. Thank you.